On a crisp November morning in 2024, the quiet streets of Ipswich, Suffolk, were shattered by the sound of police sirens. Body cam footage captures a frail 92-year-old man, Ryland Headley, standing in his modest home on Clarence Road, his hands trembling as officers inform him of his arrest. "You're being detained on suspicion of murder and rape." The officer's voice cuts through the silence, steady but heavy with the weight of history. Headley's eyes widen, his voice a faint whisper, "No comment." For nearly 6 decades, a brutal crime lay buried in the shadows of Bristol's past. A crime so heinous, it left a city in fear and a family in ruins. How could a man who lived among neighbors as a doting grandfather, a man who took in a stray kitten, be the monster who raped and murdered 75-year-old Louisa Dunn in 1967? What secrets had he carried for 58 years? And how did modern science finally unmask him? Stick with us, true crime fans, as we unravel Britain's oldest cold case, a story of relentless justice that will leave you questioning how long evil can hide. Miss this, and you'll miss a tale of resilience, betrayal, and a truth that refused to stay buried. Background and setup. In the summer of 1967, Britannia Road in Easton, Bristol, was a close-knit neighborhood where neighbors knew each other by name. Children played in the streets, and elderly residents like Louisa Dunn were familiar fixtures, their lives woven into the fabric of the community. Louisa, a 75-year-old widow, was born in 1892, when Queen Victoria still reigned. She had lived through 2 world wars, married twice, first to a city alderman, then to a night watchman, and raised 2 children. By 1967, she lived alone in her terraced home at 58 Britannia Road, her front room converted into a bedroom due to her frailty. Neighbors described her as a sprightly figure, often seen on her doorstep, watching the world go by with a warm smile. She was like everyone's grandmother, one neighbor later recalled in a statement to police. Always there, always kind. But the Bristol of 1967 was not without its shadows. The city was bustling, its docks and factories drawing workers from far and wide. Among them was Ryland Headley, a 34-year-old man living just outside the neighborhood's core. Little is known about Headley's early life, but records show he was married and starting a family in Bristol at the time. To those who knew him, he was unremarkable, a man who blended into the crowd, neither charming nor menacing. Yet beneath this ordinary facade, something darker lurked. Headley's later convictions would reveal a pattern of predatory behavior, targeting vulnerable elderly women in their homes, a chilling signature that would come to light only decades later. On the evening of June 27, 1967, Britannia Road was quiet, the summer air thick with the scent of blooming gardens. Louisa Dunn, as was her habit, likely sat in her front room, perhaps reading or knitting, unaware that someone was watching her home. A neighbor later reported hearing a faint scream in the night, but in an era before mobile phones or instant alerts, no one raised the alarm. The next morning, Violet Allen, a neighbor who regularly delivered Louisa's newspaper, grew concerned when the paper remained untouched on the doorstep. A window was slightly ajar, an unusual detail for the cautious widow. Violet climbed through and found a scene that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She cried. Inside 58 Britannia Road, the air was still, heavy with the scent of dust and tragedy. Louisa Dunn lay lifeless on her living room floor, her small frame crumpled on a pile of old clothes. Her blue skirt was disheveled, her face marked with extensive abrasions and bruising, the whites of her eyes clouded with hemorrhages. A post-mortem examination would later confirm the cause of death: asphyxia due to strangulation, likely compounded by a hand pressed brutally over her mouth. Cement found on her skirt and an intimate swab pointed to a horrific truth: she had been raped before her death. The scene was eerily calm. There were no signs of a violent struggle, no overturned furniture, just the quiet devastation of a life stolen in the night. Imagine the terror Louisa must have felt as her home, her sanctuary was violated. A window at the back of the house, forced open, bore a single clue, a partial palm print on the glass, between the wrist and the base of the little finger. It was a fleeting trace of the intruder, but in 1967, forensic science was limited. The print was preserved, along with Louisa's clothing and other evidence stored in crates at Bristol Constabulary's headquarters. The community was gripped by fear. It was like a dark cloud settled over Easton, a resident told police in a 1967 statement. We locked our doors, checked our windows. No one felt safe. The brutality of the crime was staggering. Louisa, a frail woman of 75, stood no chance against her attacker. The abrasions on her face suggested she had fought, however feebly, against the hand that silenced her. The semen evidence pointed to a sexual motive, but the lack of witnesses or additional physical evidence left investigators grasping at straws. Who could commit such a pitiless and cruel act, as the judge would later describe it? And how had they slipped away into the night, leaving only a palm print and a grieving family behind? Investigation. The Bristol Constabulary launched one of the largest investigations in its history. Over 19,000 men and boys in the area had their palm prints taken, a monumental effort to match the print found on Louisa's window. Detectives conducted 1,000 house-to-house inquiries and collected 2,000 statements, but the trail went cold. Ryland Headley, living just outside the radius of the fingerprinting operation, was never questioned. He was a ghost in the system, Detective Inspector Dave Marchant later remarked. The case, dubbed Operation Beetle in a nod to the era, became a haunting mystery, its files gathering dust in storage. For 58 years, Louisa's family lived with the emptiness and sadness of an unsolved crime. Her granddaughter, Mary Dainton, was only 20 when Louisa was killed. In a heart-wrenching victim impact statement, she described the stigma that clung to the family. People withdrew from us when they learned about the murder. It was like we carried the shame of it. Mary's mother never recovered, the anxiety clouding her life until her death. The case seemed destined to remain unsolved, a footnote in Bristol's history, until a breakthrough in forensic science changed everything. In 2023, Avon and Somerset Police's Major Crime Review team reopened the case. Advances in DNA technology had revolutionized cold case investigations, and the team, a mix of retired detectives and civilian investigators, saw potential in the preserved evidence. Among the 20 crates stored at police headquarters was Louisa's blue skirt, meticulously cataloged decades earlier. Forensic scientists extracted a full DNA profile from semen stains on the skirt, a feat impossible in 1967. When the profile was run through the national database, it returned a match: Ryland Headley. Headley, whose DNA had been added in 2012 after an unrelated arrest. The odds of the DNA belonging to someone else? 1,000,000,000 to 1. But the DNA was only the beginning. Investigators revisited the palm print from the window, now comparing it to a fresh set taken from Headley after his arrest on November 19, 2024. 4 experts confirmed the match, a critical piece of evidence linking Headley to the crime scene. It was like the past reached out and grabbed us, said D.I. Marchant. The team also uncovered Headley's criminal history. In 1977, he had pleaded guilty to raping 2 elderly women, aged 79 and 84, in Ipswich, Suffolk, after breaking into their homes. The similarities were chilling: forced entry, vulnerable victims, and threats of violence. One victim recalled Headley's cold warning: "If you scream, it'll be worse for you." Another said he threatened to smother her with a pillow if she resisted. The investigation wasn't without challenges. Headley, now 92 years, lived quietly in Ipswich, his neighbors unaware of his past. Proving he was in Bristol in 1967 required meticulous work. Former Detective Sergeant Barry Frayling spent days in city archives, unearthing electoral rolls and rate payment records to confirm Headley's presence. The team also tracked down original investigators, including Bob Day, who recalled the fear that gripped Bristol after the murder. "It was a case that stayed with us all," he told them, his voice heavy with memory. Decision point. What do you think the next step was for the investigators? Did they confront Headley with the DNA evidence, dig deeper into his past crimes, or focus on building a psychological profile to understand his motives? Pause and consider what you do to ensure a conviction in a case this old. The team chose to confront Headley. Body cam footage from his arrest shows a man caught off guard, his denials, no comment, ringing hollow against the weight of the evidence. The DNA and palm print were damning, but the prosecution knew Headley's history of similar crimes would be key to convincing a jury. Outcome and aftermath. On June 16, 2025, Ryland Headley stood trial at Bristol Crown Court, appearing via video link due to his age. He pleaded not guilty, his defense claiming he had no recollection of Louisa Dunn or the events of 1967. But the evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutor Anna Vigar's KC laid out the case meticulously. The DNA match, the palm print, and Headley's prior convictions for raping elderly women in 1977. He has a tendency, Vigars told the jury, to target vulnerable women, to break into their homes at night, to threaten violence. The testimonies of Headley's 1977 victims, read aloud in court, painted a harrowing picture of a predator who preyed on the frail. One woman, aged 84, recalled his chilling words, "If you do what I tell you, you'll be all right. If not, I'll kill you." After 9 hours and 53 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict for rape and a 10-2 majority verdict for murder on June 30, 2025. The next day, Mr. Justice Derek Sweeting sentenced Headley to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years, ensuring the 92-year-old would die behind bars. "You treated her as a means to an end," Sweeting said, his voice stern. "You showed no remorse, no shame, believing you had evaded justice." The judge noted the intergenerational impact of the crime, a powerful aggravating factor that underscored the pain inflicted on Louisa's family. The verdict was a moment of closure for Mary Dainton, now 78. In her victim impact statement, she spoke of the far-reaching devastation caused by her grandmother's death. "It turned my life upside down," she said, her voice breaking. "I feel sad and very tired." She expressed sorrow that her mother and others who loved Louisa were not alive to see justice served. The Bristol community, too, felt the weight of resolution. "It was a crime that changed how we lived," one resident told reporters, recalling the locked doors and heightened fear of 1967. Media outlets, from the BBC to The Guardian, hailed the case as the UK's oldest solved cold case, with Headley believed to be the oldest person convicted of murder in the nation's history. Police forces across the UK, including Suffolk and Norfolk, are now investigating whether Headley may be linked to other unsolved crimes from the 1960s and 1970s. Detective Inspector Marchant, speaking to Channel 4 News, said, "There's every possibility that there are other victims out there. His history is shocking and abhorrent." The National Crime Agency is assisting, combing through decades-old files for connections to Headley's pattern of nighttime break-ins, emaskins, and violent assaults. Decision point. If you were leading the investigation, would you prioritize searching for other victims, re-examining evidence from Headley's 1977 crimes, or engaging the public for new leads? The choice could uncover more victims or solidify the case against Headley for posterity. Closing reflection. The case of Louisa Dunn is a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice, a reminder that truth can endure even the longest shadows. For 58 years, her killer walked free, building a life while her family carried the weight of loss. Advances in DNA technology and the dedication of a small team of investigators prove that no crime is too old to solve, no wrong too distant to right. But this story also leaves us with a haunting question. how many other secrets lie buried in the past, waiting for science and perseverance to bring them to light? As we close this chapter, we're reminded that justice, though delayed, can still speak for those who can no longer speak for themselves.